Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. It's good to be back after a couple of weeks off. I have been reassessing a few things, but I actually got quite ill for like a week where it just completely floored me. Body basically told me that I needed to take a full week off doing everything. So I did that, and now I'm back on the regular podcast, hopefully still releasing one every single week for you guys based off my experience as a dad, as a coach, as a husband, and just going through what's going on in life and in coaching. If you have any questions or anything that you'd like me to cover off as it pertains to your health and wellness, experience as a dad or whatever, you can jump in and send us those questions on our social media pages. So at The Unstoppable Dad on Instagram or The Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook are generally the two best places to send through any questions that you might like me to cover off on this podcast. So while you're there, please make sure that whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, you're subscribed, and share it around with anybody who you think might get some value out of what it is that I am doing here. Now, today's topic, sometimes it is better to just shut up, is going to be the name of the podcast or along those lines. And the reason I'm doing a podcast on this is because I have one of my coaching clients, my remote coaching client, and with every single person that I work with, I tailor the approach to what they look for. And this particular client, not only are we working on building some aerobic capacity and mental toughness within their workouts, because this person as a hobby likes to compete in CrossFit, but they're also a budding coach. They want to become a coach, or they're in the process of becoming a coach. So they're coaching some group classes, which is obviously something that I've got a lot of background in, and I'm finding that more and more people are asking me to kind of work with them to help hone their coaching skills, both from a technical standpoint around movements, but also one of the things that I absolutely love about coaching is the art of coaching itself. So being able to mold your own style of communication to get the best out of people. I find that completely fascinating, how people respond to different ways of coaching, different levels of communication, and I also find it fascinating actually helping other people craft out their own style. And I'm a big believer that every single person that's a coach is going to have their own unique, without sounding too corny, voice. One thing that I used to say to a lot of people that would work for us in the gym is, I don't want you to be a carbon copy of me. I want you to be yourself. And I want you to be able to articulate things in a way which suits you and your personality. And most importantly, making sure that we're all on the same team and we're communicating the same point, but you're doing it in your own unique way. And that's something that, for me, like, I really enjoy doing. I really enjoy working with people to get them to the point where they're more comfortable, they're more confident, and they're able to articulate a point really, really well, which in turn helps them get the best out of people. Anyway, I digress for a few minutes. But we were talking about how they're being coached as pertains to themselves, because they're still working out at the gym that they train at, even though we're doing some extra training on the side, which is conducive with the training that they're doing, working towards an individual goal. But they sent me through a video of their squat. And they said, can you take a look at this? I keep getting feedback from this coach where they're saying that I'm going too low in my squat, and I'm getting a butt wink in the squat. So for those of you that aren't sure what a butt wink is, it is basically when you hit the bottom of a squat, if you have something lacking, it might be hip mobility, it might be ankle mobility. There'll be a whole bunch there can generally be a bunch of reasons as to why it happens. But basically, when the person squats too low, the bottom of their pelvis tilts back towards their heels, which creates flexion in the lower part of the spine, which when you're doing a squat under load, so if it's especially a back squat where the spine is actually loaded, you can actually create some major issues. You can end up with, bulging discs and things like that, just because it's not meant to kind of bend like that under load. And it can be something that when people do squat quite low happens, it can be quite a regular occurrence, especially in people who are beginning to train. And anyway, he sent me a video, and we look at this video and there's nothing there. There are a few things that are happening within the lift, but it's pretty evident that the person that's giving him this coaching cue doesn't quite understand what's happening. So they're throwing out something that is said a lot in especially the group coaching space. And it's all come down to the fact that they really don't exactly know what they're seeing. And anyway, we went on to talk about exactly what was going on with the squat, things that may need to be improved, and none of it came back to the fact that he had a quote-unquote butt wink in the bottom of the squat, or that he was squatting too low. Now, before I kind of move on to the point of what I will get to in today's topic, I just want to cover off, sometimes I'm a big believer in you squat to a range of motion which is comfortable for you and where you're able to maintain good posture and position. Especially when you're somebody who's training for general health and well-being, it is more important that you squat through a range of motion where you're able to maintain good posture and position, rather than get the crease of your hip below an imaginary line that has been dictated by other people. And there are going to be times and places, especially if you are competing in a lifting sport, you're competing in, say, CrossFit, you're competing in powerlifting, where the sport itself dictates that you have to squat to a particular range of motion. But for most people, they're not doing that. So being able to move with good posture and position, good tempo, good control through the movement to a range of motion that is dictated by you and your body type is more important. So there are a lot of times in my coaching career where I have articulated to people that they need to maybe not squat as low. So the cue itself is not a bad cue. It's just in this particular instance, it's been used due to potentially a lack of knowledge around what is actually happening in the movement. And that brings me to the topic of the podcast. And one thing that was a really hard lesson for me to learn as a coach, and then also as a husband and as a father, is sometimes the best thing you can do is just shut up and not say anything. In this particular instance that I was talking about, what it seems like has happened, and I've had a talk to the person about the context and the things that are going on with this, it seems like the coach is trying to coach for the sake of coaching. Because when you're a coach, I believe you do it because you're passionate about helping people. And when you're passionate about helping people, you almost have to resist the urge just to say something for the sake of saying something. And it's something that I've learnt the hard way as a husband and as a father. Sometimes people just want to be heard and they want to listen. And I think we have this natural inclination, especially as men. Well, I know I do, and I know a lot of people that I talk to or I coach have the same thing as well. Well, we just want to fix stuff. So when somebody's talking to us, sometimes we are automatically thinking about what are the steps that we need to take to get out of this situation, or that person needs to get out of this situation. But sometimes all they want is they just want you to listen. And that's where having that skill of just shutting up can be a really valuably learned skill that translates from the coaching world over into our everyday life. Now, there is always going to be a time and a place where people are looking for advice and they're looking for direction. And if we have the expertise to be able to lend that advice, sometimes it is a good thing to then say anything, but we need to kind of understand our battles. And when we're talking about, say, parenting, one thing that I find very hard to do is, because I want to fix everything and I don't want to see my kids in pain, I'm constantly having to check myself where I'm listening to them and I'm wanting to say something to them, and I have to think, like, is this actually a scenario where, especially my daughter as she's getting older, where maybe she just wants me to listen to her and she wants to be heard rather than me trying to be a parent and trying to fix everything. And talking for the sake of talking or parenting for the sake of parenting. And it's something that I learned very early on with my life, my wife, I should say, in life, in married life, where sometimes you just need to shut up. You need to just let them talk, let them vent, let them say what needs to be said, and then understand the time and the place for injecting your 2 cents. Because as a man, as a father, and even as a coach, somebody who's in that kind of professional space, there is a natural urge to want to fix a problem. And I think that there all does become a point where if you keep letting that problem be a problem, then you probably need to say something and we need to make a direction to get out of it. But sometimes people just want to be heard and they just want you to listen. And when it comes to relate that back to the coaching piece, sometimes the hardest skill for me to learn, because I'm so passionate about movement and helping people and trying to make people better, is sometimes you just need to take a step back and let people work it out for themselves and not say things for the sake of saying it. Like this instance that I was talking about, where it's like, hey, you're squatting too low and you're getting a butt wink. Well, no, you're not. When we actually look at the video and we look at what's going on there, that's not the case at all. So why in this instance did we say that? Well, there is something going on, which was a minor thing, which we ended up identifying. So the person is saying something really just for the sake of saying it. But more importantly, the biggest issue becomes in that, and this is probably a topic for another podcast, is that they see something that's not quite right, but they don't know what it is. So now they're just saying something due to the fact that they lack the knowledge to actually articulate what they're really seeing is going on, when what really needs to be said is, hey, there's something going on here. I'm not quite sure what it is. Give me a chance to think about it and I'll come back to you. But the thing in this instance, right, and this is where coming back to sometimes just shutting up and not saying anything, is that the person was not in a bad position. There was nothing that was going on there where they were going to hurt themselves or injure themselves. And nothing really needed to be said. And that same thing, that same principle, I think from time to time, and probably more times than I would like to acknowledge, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to just helping people, that same premise of just shutting up and letting the person talk and letting them kind of work through it in their own time. And all they need is they just need a bit of a shoulder to cry on. They need an ear to listen to, rather than leaning into that natural want just to fix everything in the first instance, can be a really powerful thing to help enhance your relationships. And then from a parent point of view, one thing that I've actually worked out is by shutting up and letting the kids actually work through it, they sometimes just work it out by themselves, which actually makes them, I believe that's going to help make them more resilient. It's going to make them more capable to be able to deal with things when they come up, rather than me trying to swoop in and fix everything for them when it happens, just because I don't like to see them in pain. It's almost like by doing that, I'm being a little bit selfish by not just letting them work that out and not just letting them sort it out in their own way. And then if there is an inherent danger to them, or they're going to hurt themselves while doing something, then obviously it's parents, it's our responsibility to kind of shortcut that and make sure that they're able to fail and they're able to work it out in a safe environment. But if I'm being completely honest and looking at things from an objective standpoint and not from the dad wants to fix everything and make sure you're not feeling pain lens, there's a lot of times where I would be better served just shutting up and listening and letting them work it out, rather than trying to coach them through a particular situation that they really need to just be left alone, or they just need somebody to listen on. So sometimes one of the hardest skills to develop and to learn as a dad, as a husband, and then also as a coach, is just to shut up and just let people work it out from themselves. If they're not in danger and they're not hurting themselves or hurting other people around them, sometimes you just need to let them fail in a safe and controlled environment and then work out how to overcome that by themselves. And sometimes you just need to be they just want to talk to somebody. And by you being there, especially as a parent, one thing that I've noticed is by being just the listener more rather than trying to be the fixer more, is my kids or my daughter is kind of a little bit more open to having conversations with me because she feels heard, she feels listened to, and I think that's a really important thing, and that's something that is so important as they get older, to resist that urge to want to fix everything, and coaching for the sake of coaching, saying something for the sake of saying something, which really this whole podcast is just me saying things for the sake of saying things. So hopefully you get some value from it. Hopefully you enjoy the things that I'm talking about. If you have any questions, send them through. If you've got any guests that you would like to push my way, if you think that they'd be a really good conversation around the topic of fatherhood, fitness, health, well-being, please reach out on the Facebook page or the Instagram page, because I'd love to start doing some interviews on the podcast over the next few months. So thanks so much again for listening. I really appreciate your time, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye.